If you've thought that you should be using your camera's histogram but have been totally confused about how to read it or what it means, then today's video is going to break it down for you. Today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare, so I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about them later on in the video, but for now, let's talk histograms. A lot of people kind of know what a histogram is, but don't really know how to get the most out of it, which often means it gets ignored, which is such a shame because there is so much helpful information in your histogram. So let's talk about what a histogram is. So a histogram is a graphical representation of the tonal range of your photo. It's the most accurate way to assess the exposure of your image, and it looks a little something like this. When it comes to exposure, the most accurate way to control this yourself is by shooting in manual mode. So if you're not there yet or you're just a bit overwhelmed by it, then check out my totally free 5-day e-course Manual Mode Essentials, which is going to get you fully set up in manual mode in under a week. So histograms are actually very logical and easy to understand, and once you've nailed reading them, you'll be amazed how much creative freedom it can unlock. So before we jump in, go ahead and switch on the histogram preview on your camera if you have it available. It will instantly generate the histogram for your photo, so you can look at it straight away and make any immediate tweaks to your exposure. So let's take a look at the layout of a histogram. It's a basic bar graph really, with the x-axis showing the tones in your photo going from left to right as follows. On the left, we've got pure black, then shadows, midtones, lights, and pure white. The y-axis shows you how many of the pixels in your photo fall within that tone. So a histogram that is more heavily weighted on the left-hand side represents a darker photo, and a histogram more heavily weighted on the right-hand side is a brighter photo. Something people often wonder is what your histogram should look like. So there is no right or wrong shape for a histogram. You have to remember that photography is an art, not a science. Okay, maybe it's a bit science, but you should use your histogram as a tool to help you improve your photography, not as a rule that you feel restricted by. One of the most useful features of a histogram is to show you clipped areas, which are pixels that are sitting right on each end of the x-axis, aka pure black and pure white. These clipped areas look like spikes up the side of the histogram like this, and the parts of the graph sitting in each of the extreme right and the extreme left that look like they've been smushed up the side represent data loss in those parts of the image. The pure black and pure white tones can't be recovered in post-production editing, so unfortunately they're largely lost forever. So having your histogram show you this while you're shooting can help you avoid some awkward situations later, especially if you're shooting for print. But like I mentioned earlier, there's no ideal shape for a histogram, so when it comes to clipping, it's not always bad. Depending on the subject you're shooting and the effect you're going for, you may find that your photo looks perfect with a little bit of clipping. So use the histogram as a tool to guide you rather than trying to achieve a histogram with no clipping at all just for the sake of it. Okay, so we're going to look at some of this in live action, but before we do that, I want to tell you a bit more about the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community for creatives with literally thousands of classes to help you expand your creative skills in areas like illustration, graphic design, photography, UI, UX design, and so much more. It's the perfect platform for lifelong learners like me who are always looking for something new to learn. Recently, I've been mixing up the way I edit my non-food images. Yes, I do sometimes take photos of things other than food, and I've been loving this class on editing cinematic style images in Adobe Camera Raw by Elizabeth Weinberg. I've pretty much been exclusively using Lightroom to edit my images for so long that it's really fun to dive into another program and another style. I really loved how Elizabeth broke down the steps in the color, style, and mood lesson, which just really opened me up to thinking about editing images in a new way. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new premium classes. So so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity wants to take you. And as a member, you get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and feedback from a community of literally millions. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of a premium membership so you can explore your creativity and learn something new. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video and supporting food photography education. Okay, so back to histograms. I'm going to be doing this demo using my tethering screen in Capture One today, mostly so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. But the effects you see are exactly the same whether you're tethering or not. So let's go. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start with a light and bright scene first. So I've just got this really simple setup with these two strawberry tarts. We're not going for anything super big and fancy for this demonstration. In terms of lighting setup, I've got my 65cm beauty dish, so relatively small modifier, but this subject is really small, so I don't need anything super big. And that is set up with my Godox continuous light. It's just easier to show you how the histogram works using a continuous light today. And then I've got this white bounce card, just bouncing a little bit of light back into those shadows. I'm just resting it on a clamp on the side of my scene. I've got my camera set up on my tripod here, and that is tethering into the iMac into Capture One. I'm using manual mode and manual focus. I've already gone ahead and set my focus point, so I don't need to go back to the camera, so I can show you everything in here. So let's jump into Capture One and I'll show you how I use the histogram to expose a light and bright image. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got our live view. So you'll see if I wave, that's my live view screen. And then on the right-hand side is the library side. So that will show me my final images after I've taken them. So first of all, looking at this image, yes, we want it to be a light and bright image, but at the moment it is just a little bit too bright. And if we have a look at the histogram at the moment, I've got it, this tool is called the exposure evaluation in Capture One. So if you are using that and you don't have it, you just want to right click on the tool area and add tool and then scroll to exposure evaluation. So we can see that we've got a lot of tones here on the right hand side, which is totally to be expected in a light and bright image. If you remember that we talked about the histogram going from left to right on the x-axis, goes from pure blacks to shadows, midtones, lights, and pure white. So for light and bright images, it makes sense that our histogram is much, much taller on the right-hand side. We do still have a little bit of something going on the left. We've got these sort of shadow areas here, and we do still want to have a certain amount of contrast in our histograms. But at the moment, this is looking a little bit too bright for me. It's not quite peaking. We have got a little bit of clipping here. If I turn on the exposure warning tool, then you can see all of these areas here that it picks up in red are actually clipped. So that means there's no data in that part of the image at all, it's pure white. So let's go ahead and make some changes to our exposure to try and just bring it down a little bit. So right now I'm working with an ISO of 200, I'm on a tripod, so there's really no need for that at all. So I'm gonna take that all the way down to 100. And then I think the depth of field is a little bit too shallow, there's a bit too much blur going on. I want to see a little bit more definition on the front tart. So I'm going to take my aperture up to 5.6. Now, as you can see, as we're making all of those changes, we're lowering our ISO, which is going to bring down our exposure. We're narrowing that aperture ring in the lens, so it's letting in a little bit more, less light. So it makes sense that our image has gotten a bit darker. So it's probably a bit too dark now. Let's take a photo and see what the histogram looks like now. So if we come over to our library on the right, now you can see we've got far more going on in the left-hand side and not really anything on the right. But if let me just turn off the grid for the moment. If we just zoom in on the image here, I'm much happier with the depth of field now. So we've got these strawberries are really nicely in focus all the way to the back. So I really like that. So how I'm going to fix the exposure is simply reducing my shutter speed. So I'm going to slow it down and I'm going to keep looking at it until it looks about right. That might be okay. Let's take another one and have a look. Okay, perfect. So if we just turn on our exposure warning, we can see we don't have any clipped areas, but the image is nice and light and bright, and our histogram is now a little bit more even. I could probably push it just a little bit more because we have got this sort of very flat area here. I don't want anything too close to the right, but I probably could push it a little bit more. So let's just try 1/15 of a second and take another shot. There we go. So to me, this is a good example of, it's not quite perfect. We have got this little clipped area here. If we just turn that off, you'll see it's over there, but it's really in a non-important part of the image. This image isn't going to be printed, so I'm not too worried about it. If I was printing it, I probably would stick with the 1/20th of a second shutter speed just to make sure we don't have any clipped areas at all. If we just turn it on, you see here there's nothing, and in this image we've just got that little bit there. But overall, I think the exposure of the rest of the image is a lot nicer for the 1/15. That is how I use my histogram for a light and bright image. So I'm going to go ahead, reset to a dark and moody, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so next up we have a dark and moody setup. So we're kind of trying to achieve kind of the opposite of what we just did with the light and bright, where we want a histogram that's a little bit more weighted on the left. Something I see often in dark and moody photography is people go a little bit too dark, which means you end up with a lot of clipped shadows and you don't really have anything going on the right hand side of the histogram, and we still need to bring in some brightness and definition into our images, otherwise they're going to look really flat. So for the lighting setup for this image, I've switched out the beauty dish for my 1x4 strip softbox, and I've added the honeycomb grid on the front. So the strip softbox in itself is already going to create a really concentrated beam of light. You can see there's not nearly as much light spill around the scene, and the honeycomb grid just really helps with that by making the light even more directional. So I've placed it sort of just to the front of my scene, so it's kind of coming across the center and it's going to wrap around the front of the cake a bit. So let's have a look at what we've got going on at the moment. So this is right now exactly the same camera settings that I had for the light and bright image. But at the moment, to me, it is just looking a little bit too dark. If we head over into the library panel, you can see this is the photo. We don't actually have any sort of exposure warning going on, but you can see from the histogram that everything is really completely pushed up to the left, which does mean a lot of the detail in this image gets lost. So if I just zoom in here for a second, you can really see over this side of the cake, you just really don't see anything. We have got sort of a nice amount of detail here. I also think the depth of field is a little bit too shallow. We've got this really in focus part here, and then everything is blurry. So let's go ahead and change some of that up. So first of all, to make the depth of field a little bit wider, oops, wrong way, we're going to up our aperture, so that's making that opening even smaller on the lens. And I think I want to try, maybe let's start with f9, because this is quite a close-up image. And then you can see that's gone ahead and made our image a lot darker. So we're going to slow down our shutter speed until it looks a bit more lifelike. Let's start with that. Let's take another image and then see how that looks on our histogram on the right. There we go. So already it's looking better. So you can see we've got a little bit more compared to the last image, which was really just completely up against the left and then really completely flat in this area. This image already has a little bit more going on here, but it is still very, very pushed up against the left. So I think I'm going to slow it down even more. So don't be afraid if the image looks a little brighter than the final edit that you want to go for. The reason why we want to try and capture as much of that detail here as possible is, as we mentioned, any data that's in that really squished up to the left part is going to be completely lost and you can't get it back. So by having as much of the detail as possible out of camera, you can still bring things down in your editing, but at least you've got quite a lot to work with. So let's try this and see. Okay, this is starting to look better now. So now can you see how in this histogram, it's not quite pushed right up against the left, but it is still really, really focused in those dark tones. And if anything now, I don't know if you can see, let me zoom in and see. Can you see those tiny red spots? That means that those areas are actually a little bit overexposed. So we're going to go ahead and fix that, because there is no need for us to have overexposed parts of a dark and moody image. So let's just change it, make our shutter speed just a little bit faster and see if that has fixed this issue. Yes, it has by the looks of it. So that is more how I would use the histogram for a dark and moody. So we've got everything really concentrated to the left, so we're really making the most of those dark tones. We don't have an awful lot going on in the highlights, so it's not going to change the overall feel of this image. And in our light and bright, we're much more weighted on the right with much less going on the left. So I hope that made sense to you. I hope that's helped you see how you can use your histogram to help you with the exposure of light and dark images. As I mentioned, there are no hard and fast rules, so don't feel like this is the shape of the histogram you have to stick to. It totally depends on the image. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.